Last summer, I was in France serving a LDS mission, and my dad, he would write me every week, every so often. He was going on this huge bike ride from New York to California, all the way across the country, and how I was so amazed that had the dedication and determination to bike across the entire United States. I think about what that takes just physically. That's unbelievable to think about just the physical aspect, but to take it a step further and to be doing it for a greater cause, to be doing it to raise awareness for children.
We are going to have a 10-fold hit on DNA matches if we actually do this, and it is going to resolve so many crimes.
Safety education program that teaches not just self-defense and realistic physical skills to resist violence and abduction, but teaches children all about how to keep themselves safe.
And it sets minimum standards for sex offenders, and it asks states to come into compliance. Currently, only a few states are in compliance, and we need your state to come into compliance. There is money available.
Adam Walsh Act, the sex offender registry. Why don't we have it? The law was passed in 2006. There are only 4 states and 2 territories that they complied with it.
I think that most parents don't think that bad things will happen to them or to their children. And when Elizabeth was abducted on June 5th, 2002, a reality set into our family that has not changed. People talk about what normal is in their life, and what normal is changes, particularly when you have a traumatic event. And I believe that in most cases, that normal changes to a new normal. It's not going to be the way it used to be. That doesn't mean that it can't be good.
When my daughter was taken, I was very lucky and I got her back. And that was an absolute miracle, and it was a great blessing to our family.
How did you get your daughter back?
You know, a lot of people were out there looking, and they saw her with the 2 people that took her, and they called the police, and the police came over and got them, and they brought my daughter home to me.
I remember Lois coming down the steps and slapping the lights on and seeing that cut screen and screaming. And from that point on, the reality of what happened in our life changed. I remember seeing her sit in our living room crying and being in the worst pain that I've ever seen her in, and feeling that, what can I do? What can I do? What should I be doing?
I'll never forget the emotion that I felt as I saw Elizabeth for the first time when she returned home. She was sitting on a sofa and the door opened, and I looked over there and I saw this girl who had matured so amazingly. I couldn't imagine a child growing into such a young woman as she did. And a myriad of things were going through my mind, and I thought, this has got to be here. And I ran over there and I grabbed her, and of course I was crying. And Lois we had no idea what I was going to find. and Lois wasn't with me at the time. But I grabbed her and I was crying, and finally I held her back and I said, "Elizabeth, is it really you?" And at that point she started crying and she said, "Yes, Dad."
And I remember being escorted off into the police car, and we headed for Salt Lake Police Department, and calling Lois and saying, "Lois, you're not going to believe this, but Elizabeth is really here. We're going to be okay." And Elizabeth was sitting virtually on my lap, and Lois was screaming, "Let me talk to her, let me talk to her." And the cell phone went dead.
And I am Ahmad Rivisfire. Not one more child, not here, not anywhere. I got home from work, and my sister-in-law, who lives in Pensacola, Florida, called me up, crying on the phone. She says she saw on the news that they showed my ex-wife's apartment, saying that 2 little girls were abducted from that apartment, and they were both found dead. And she says she tried to call the police, but they wouldn't give her any information. And so she told me to call Santa Rosa Sheriff Department. I called Santa Rosa Sheriff Department and got a deputy sheriff on the phone. I told him who I was, and I told him that the story that my sister-in-law had seen on TV, and I wanted to see if those 2 girls were my kids. He asked me a few questions, and then he told me, yes, that is true, that the 2 little girls were my kids, and he couldn't tell me anything else unless I arrived in person. I am a surviving parent. Just like my fellow surviving parents, we felt the pain and agony of losing a child, have a child still missing, or recovered our child deceased. I had 2 daughters that were abducted. I can relate to my fellow coalition members, most of them, because I had one who did not survive the horrible attack. But my 8-year-old walked out of the woods. She was left there to die with my 6-year-old Sarah. The sheriff deputy and the nurse, they showed me down in this basement. And I walked in that basement. My Sarah was laid out. I could see the anguish in her face. It covered her up to her neck. I can only see her face. I wanted to die.
She was playing at the ballpark. He was riding his bike. She was walking to school, following what she thought were the rules. She was playing in the
Right. Not like that, like this. Not normal, but it looks better.
Susie was 19. She would have been 20 on April 6th of that year.
What are you doing over there?
We do not know what happened to her. It's like a needle in a haystack. She just vanished.
She was last seen getting off a bus at the Collins Circle near the visitors parking. There was an old employee ID badge found 2 months later off the visitors parking lot in kind of a grassy area. It had been out there for quite a period of time.
When her dorm room was looked at later, it looked as if she was coming back.
Make straight pieces of hair look curly.
Her hair dryer was on the bed, all her personal items were still there. She had money on top of her desk, change, money.
That her ATM card was used the day following her, her disappearance, in a convenience store that, was one that she wouldn't have gone to on her own.
Which was about 2 miles from the campus. The password was a direct hit.
Her boyfriend was the one. Rich told us that she was missing, and I believe he said, "Did you know that Suzanne didn't come home last night," or something to that effect.
Hi. Okay, so something for homecoming.
I don't care how I get her back, but I want her back.
2002 was a horrendous year of kidnapping and murder, and we were the very first on the first day. Between dinner and dessert, my daughter disappeared into the night.
When I was 13 years old, I had met a man on the internet, and he had groomed me and lured me outside to meet him. And he had abducted me and taken me to Virginia, where I was held captive for 4 days until I was rescued by the FBI.
Create the largest law enforcement army ever to go after the more than 1 million child pornographers that are in this country, in the United States, that are downloading and distributing child pornography. The Protect Act focuses
We have
on
identified over 1 million individual computer serial numbers in this country actively uploading known images and videos of child pornography, which is really a nice way of saying crime scene images and videos of sexual assaults against children.
1/3 of the cases where they go in and are able to kick down that door to arrest the person that is downloading child pornography, they're able to rescue and save a child victim.
Ed Smart and Ahmad Riversfar are bicycle riding across the nation.
They're actually starting in Rochester, New York, and each stop will have a surviving member. So they're going to be riding into Columbus later on this afternoon.
Thank you so much for coming to the Ride for Their Lives. I want to start by thanking Limited Brands for being the national sponsor of the Surviving Parents Coalition's Ride for Their Lives.
Just like a lion, we care for our cubs. Gotta stop this cycle. We just can't give up. No.
This ride needs to get people's attention. That it's not just our mission, it should be all of our missions.
Just really celebrating the campaign and the awareness around protecting our children.
I can't imagine the pain and suffering and if anything we can do to keep that from happening ever again is something we should work hard to do.
But this ride is not about Ahmad and myself. It is not about any of the SBC parents that are here. It is about our children, all of our children.